All right.
Just making sure that we're good on everything. Okay, yeah, we should be. All right, cool. As people are piling in here, just as always, any sort of questions or anything, feel free to ask us. I don't think a lot has really changed too much. I did see an email actually in the from Amazon relating to some fee changes or issues, but I saw it was on the Mexican marketplace. I don't know that it was for the US as well. I don't know. Did you see anything?
No, no, I think that for US, it's they made that announcement about the fees staying the same.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, they always send out, Amazon. I feel like is always sending out emails on other foreign marketplaces, but since we had that issue, this year with the Mexico marketplace and everything, like we just stay
Mm-hmm.
away from the foreign marketplaces. I know a lot of sellers will sell on those marketplaces, but it's just like to me the juice is not worth the squeeze. It's just not worth the compliance risk of selling on other marketplaces for like the volume that you're going to sell.
Yeah, I mean, you can run the numbers. It just doesn't make sense a lot of the times. I was trying to find what I was talking about here. Now I look like a liar. I don't know where it is. Um, yeah, but it had to do with, it was like a whole list of things. It had to do with just different changes in storage fees and things like that. I don't know where it is. Here it is. Yeah. Um, FBA fulfillment fees will decrease by an average of 16.1% for a new tier of products priced between MXN 299 and 499. Yeah, it looks like it's all Mexico marketplace. But if you do sell on there, check your email. Didn't receive anything about the US at all. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think this is.
Yeah. So if anybody joining in here, you guys have any questions, drop them here in the chat. We go live, every Wednesday, Wholesale Wednesday. Got a free course out for you guys. Just put out a ton
Yeah.
of great information in this video. I'm going to pop it down here in the chat. I mean, step by step, it's like,
Yeah, that just this morning actually on YouTube, that was a work in the making for sure. We put a lot of time behind that, trying to make sure that it was everything from beginner to I mean, we touched on everything from how to open basically from the Seller Central account inception all the way to the exclusivity element, and there's a brand call in there. There's a lot of information. So anyone that's been asking for anything relating to, calling a brand or contacting a supplier or phone script or anything, it's probably in that video. So it's almost 2 hours long. So
yeah. So with Amazon Wholesale, it's like, I always have liked to break it out into pillars, in explaining Amazon Wholesale to people, right? You have pillar one, where you're setting up your Amazon business, you're getting your business EIN, your resale permit, your business email domain, you're legitimizing yourself as a business, right? It's going to be useful when you go to outreach to suppliers, and it's just you need these things to run a business. Sourcing, you got to source the right companies, contacting, and you take your list from sourcing, and then you go and do outreach to these companies to open a wholesale account. Once you got your wholesale account, at that point it's about getting a product list, analyzing profitability, understanding what's selling, what's profitable, return on investment, things like that, placing a test order, determining your shipping, your payment, and all of the logistical information. And then rinsing and repeating that process, and then we like to take it a step further, which is the brand exclusivity. So maybe we're already working with a brand, or we're working with a distributor. How can we work our way in with that brand to ultimately get, what is much sought after, which is brand exclusivity on Amazon. So this course, this free course on YouTube, takes you through each one of those steps in detail. So, it's definitely worth checking out if you're looking to start Amazon wholesale, or if you're doing retail online arbitrage, looking to transition into a business model that's more scalable and reliable.
Yeah, one of the things at the beginning of that video is you say, I truly believe this is the only video you will ever need to sell wholesale on Amazon. And it's a bold statement, but I think it's true given the amount of information that's in there. So if you are watching this and you're confused at any point in your journey, whether it is how to find a supplier that meets your criteria, or whether that's how to call, or whether that's how to close a brand direct exclusive, it is in that video. So definitely go and check that out. It's a lot, but if you can make it through the whole 2 hours, it's definitely well worth your while.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and I think for beginners with Amazon wholesale, sometimes you get into selling on Amazon, or maybe you start thinking about you know selling on Amazon, and maybe you're just overwhelmed with tons of information, right? There's so many different businesses, and online in general, but with Amazon, it's like, should I choose retail, arbitrage, wholesale, private label? Um, the reality is, I think Amazon wholesale is really the best business model for, you know, if you're just starting out. We always say start with retail online arbitrage. That's great, but like, 6 months in, there's no reason why you can't transition right into wholesale.
Yeah, and it's almost more beneficial to do that. I mean, we've had that experience of transitioning out of arbitrage into wholesale. And, honestly, the more you scale the business in terms of the arbitrage, it almost seems like the harder it is to transition out of it into wholesale. I think if you get your feet wet at the beginning and you understand and use arbitrage as a way of learning how the platform works, and almost getting that instant gratification a little bit to say like, hey, I can actually make money selling on Amazon, then transitioning out of it, if that's your long-term play, is to do wholesale or private label, then it's almost I would advise honestly getting out of arbitrage faster, just because if you build up this big arbitrage empire, it's kind of harder to leave it. Um, for two reasons. One, it's harder to leave it on the basis of you just, we like what's normal and we like to continue what we're doing. It's uncomfortable to start a new business model. And realistically, from a logistical standpoint, it's difficult to stop your income, because that's what happened to us. I mean, income stopped when we stopped doing arbitrage because you're not going out and finding product anymore.
Yeah. It's almost like, cut it off before it gets, you can make arbitrage successful, but the more you want to transition into wholesale, start with, doing arbitrage and just get out of there as quickly as you can, and get into wholesale. Once you feel like you have a good solid foundation from an Amazon selling standpoint, logistics, maybe do hybrid a little bit where you're doing both. But yeah, I mean, that's what I would say. So,
Mm.
Darkness mentions here about that you can't stay at your full-time job, and this has to work. I'd love to hear maybe if you want to share a little bit more on what your biggest challenge might be in, the business that we can help you work through. I think that's a tough, we were there, right? We were working jobs, and it's a scary decision, thinking I gotta, I got to make this business model work, but it is very, very possible. Um, you know,
Yeah. Is that, you can answer this too while you're at it, telling us about your full-time job. Is that the guy from Disturbed? Is that what your profile picture is? Looks just like it, like the mascot, I guess. I had to look it up. It's literally called the guy that Disturbed uses on their logos. So it looks like him.
yeah, but I mean, just the with the whole full time job thing, um, you know, I mean, you were there, right? I was
Oh yeah.
there. You have, I mean, I know for me, I didn't want to work a 9 to 5. I just didn't want to, um, work a job that I just was going to be stuck in, and just have everything was going to be capped and structured. I wanted that flexibility in my day. I wanted to be able to have the autonomy to, do things when I choose to do them, and I know we're similar like that, but you were sort
Yeah.
of in a similar position too.
Yeah, I was gonna touch on that as far as like what you had said there. Um, I think that it's a almost a mentality thing. I think that the person who has the mindset of not wanting to work a job is really never going to be happy no matter what job they're in. And so, some people are just like some people are meant to work 9 to 5s and they're completely happy with that. Some people are very unfulfilled by it, and that's how I was as well. And it just didn't. I knew at the end of the day when I went home, I didn't want to go to work the next day. And I was working. It took one job and it took a part-time job for me to realize that. A lot of people aren't that lucky. A lot of people wind up working for 20, 30 years and then realizing that they, hate their job and are unfulfilled. So I think if you have that mentality, you're always going to have it. And to make it work, as kind of said there in the comments.
Yeah, well, I think you hit on the big term there, which is fulfillment. And that's really what this business model can provide, or entrepreneurship in general provides, is fulfillment.
No, no, no pun intended there. So,
Oh yeah, fulfillment by
yeah,
Amazon.
it's like,
Yeah, but that's the biggest thing. It's fulfillment in entrepreneurship. Um, I don't. There's nothing else out there that you can get that kind of fulfillment. It's more than money. It's the it's the
it's way more than money.
gratification. It's the
Yeah,
gratification of knowing of making a sequence of decisions that have a certain element of risk to them, and then watching them be successful, and then multiplying that over and over again. I think that's where the fulfillment comes from.
yeah, and there's more to it as well. You just obviously there's money and there's time freedom. Like for me, and everyone obviously has their own reasons, but I tweeted something about it. I was like, money is cool, but what's even cooler is being able to, for me, the most important thing to me is my family, right? So being able to spend more time with my family or being able to make decisions and not be confined to something else like a 9 to 5, because I mean, not to get too deep or philosophical, right? But you really only get one life and you work for the majority of it. You work and you sleep. So, controlling things that I can control, I would rather love what I do and have the time, flexibility, and freedom to do other things inside my life, like be with my family or my friends or be there for people when they need me. That's super important to me. And I would rather quite literally, be a broke entrepreneur than work for someone that, um, is going to confine my schedule at this point in my life.
Yeah, yeah, no, and nobody's saying like you can't find fulfillment in your career and your job. A lot, many people do, which is great. And just think entrepreneurship, if it brings a different level of fulfillment, because especially you have to go through this risk, and you have to go through this, period of uncertainty, and just questioning, is this going to work? Am I doing the right thing? I'm like, people maybe are looking at me like I'm crazy. Is this going to work? And then, over time, it starts to compound itself, and you start to see the success, and it's like, that, like, all that is where the fulfillment comes from. So, anybody watching this just starting, like, hang in there and just keep chipping away at it slowly but surely, and just consuming really great information from people who have been there, done that, not just from us, but anybody in the space who's, successful. Is just really, moving in that direction, is just continuously reminding yourself, like, this is going to work. This is going to work. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. No,
Yeah. I mean, most of the people that are watching our content probably are in that bucket of not being fulfilled by a job. So I think we can safely speak to the community that, is not happy with that. But it's not to say that you can't have a ton of success. Like, it's not one or the other, right? Like, you don't have to be a broke entrepreneur. You can also do something that supports your family and yourself and everything, and have it make sense and be fulfilled. So kind of get the best of all situations.
Yeah.
The difference too, I mean, like, you look at it, I mean, I don't know these statistics, right? But like, let's, let's say that you're working a job for, X amount of years, like 10, 15 years. The ability to move upward in terms of a salary versus the ability, I mean, you could add one wholesale account that'll literally bump you to a new tax bracket, and it's like,
Yeah.
you will never get that kind of compounding working for someone else. So the upside potential is not even there most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. You could, speaking on Amazon wholesale, like you could literally land one account, just as you said. Of course, that's backed by years, probably, of consistent work, right? Maybe for months, or even if some of those years, you didn't really see a ton of profits, right? But it's the work that you put in and the knowledge that you learned that puts you in a position to close an account like that, right? To close an account that is going to bump you to another tax bracket. So it's like you got to go through all this work. But that's the nature of wholesale. It's the nature of pretty much any business, right? Is you have to delay that gratification a bit. Um, you know, you might not be making money right away, or for the first 6 months or year, or what have you, but putting in that work, delaying the gratification to then achieve the end result is that end result is going to be a lot greater than if you took what was right in front of you today. But the
Yeah. I
interesting
mean,
part
I was
about
looking at an account. No, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was
Sorry.
just going to say that the interesting part about because most businesses, require like a long period where can't make any money, or maybe you have to make a big investment, and you have to take out a loan or something to fund something. With selling online, it's selling name brand products online. You're immediately buying something that's already selling. So like the speed at which you get your investment back is much quicker than many other businesses.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I was looking at an email chain of an account that we're closing exclusively today, that the first initial contact was back in March of 2023. So it just goes to show you, like, there is just such a propensity towards those that want to stay in the game. Like, there's most people not making it past 6 months. I mean, you will never get that opportunity. So, like, I think that there's a certain element, we always talk about the compounding, and there's a certain element at which you're reaching out in such scale, or you have enough follow-ups or whatever it might be. There's enough, irons in the fire, that there's always something on the horizon. And I think that's something that you don't really get at the beginning, because you just haven't had enough time for those companies and distributors and brands to kind of marinate in the process. But eventually it gets to be where it's just a constant stream if you're reaching out with enough volume.
Yeah. And that's the thing in the beginning, is just, really putting in those reps and those calls, like just grinding out, 50 to 100 calls per week in the beginning phases is so important to just get that experience and get better at talking to brands and distributors on the phone, and just perfect your craft. It's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's all it is. You have a answer for everything. I mean, I was on a call on, I think it was yesterday morning. And I talked about this on another call that we had, but the brand owner, at the end of the call, told me that they had not given more than 30 seconds to anyone that mentioned the word Amazon in the last 8 years. And I kept the guy on the phone for 35 minutes, and it's not to say that, like, you or me are these unbelievable salespeople, right? It's just learning the emotional intelligence aspect of it, and understanding what to say and when to say it, and how the brand owner reacts, and then how to react based on their reaction, and to kind of steer the conversation is something that's just learned, and it's like doing it over and over and over again. But the bar for something like that is usually just throwing money at the brand owner, and that doesn't work with brands like we talk about. A lot of brands don't care about money in that regard.
Yeah, a lot of brands are driven by a deeper motivation. It's because of that vested interest that they have in the brand. You think about if you started a brand, right? Maybe you're a founder of the brand, like, that's a baby that you started from scratch. Like, you have such a vested interest in the success. It's not just the money, it's the equity of the brand. It's how your products are being represented and interacted by customers, so all those different things. And that's really, what we found to be like the biggest value add for these brands is like showcasing that vision and aligning yourself with their vision. Like, we'll literally, I'll say to brands very frequently is that when we work with a brand, when we bring a brand on, um, we treat that brand like it's our own.
Yeah, you really do. And that's not just, I mean, I think that our jobs, quote unquote, would be significantly more difficult if we didn't truly know and believe that what we're doing is the best thing for the brand. If you're living this, for me personally, I don't know about anybody else, right? But if you're living this like snake oil salesman tactic where maybe you're promising these large orders, or you're going into it knowing that you're not going to take a vested interest and do what you say. I personally, for me, it's not a business model I'd want to be in, but it's also, I think, a little bit short-sighted. And I think we've found some pretty good success long-term with playing the long game, and going for the marathon, not a sprint. Because there are certain things, like I said, that matter more than money. And that's aligning yourself, as you mentioned, with the brand owner and what their needs are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the biggest thing is playing the long game, you know, play the
It's
long
hard to
game.
do.
It is hard to, because it's, again, goes back to that delayed gratification. It's not a lot of people can do that. And I think that that's where, if you're doing Amazon wholesale and, especially with brands and you're reaching directly out to brands, to close wholesale accounts, that's where you could just massively differentiate yourself from everybody else. Like, we talk a lot about, Amazon wholesale, but there was there's an old way of doing Amazon wholesale, and there's a new way. And 5 years from now, 10 years from now, there's going to be another new way, right? It's not, the model's not changing. The model is here to stay. It's just about pivoting and adapting, and doing what is optimal. And one of the things that's optimal today that maybe wasn't even relevant 5 or 10 years ago is exactly what we're saying, which is to showcase um, all of this information to brands, and really focus on working with brands and providing them value and empathizing with their challenges, because the reality is that they get reached out to by thousands and thousands of sellers, um,
Yep.
multiple every single day. And if you don't differentiate yourself and you just force orders down their throats, and say in the first email how much money you're going to spend, and this and that, it's a breath of fresh air when you approach it from a completely different angle, which is the angle of being empathetic, which is the angle of getting on the phone and talking things through and getting to know them. And that's, to me, that's
I
the new
mean,
way of
you
doing
had a
it.
call the other day where the guy actually thanked you for not doing that, or he said, thank you for not trying to order a massive amount of product.
Yeah. He asked me a question. It was a Zoom call. He asked me what uh he said, can you put together some forecasts? And we weren't talking we were we talked a little bit about exclusivity, but we're not going to get there just yet. But he said, can you I said, let's crawl before we run, so to speak, and we'll start, by optimizing the listings with other sellers on there. And he said, can you put together some forecasts, right, with other sellers, still on the listing? And I flat out said to him, I started explaining the buy box algorithm, and I said, this is how the buy box works, and the reality is that we have no way of knowing if we're going to be in that buying position. And he said that is the exact answer that I was looking for. That is like a breath of fresh air that everybody tells me, gives me all this BS about how much they're going to buy. And it's just, he said like that right there, it gave me a reason was the reason that I want to work with you.
It's interesting. It's interesting, right? Like as a brand new seller, even if you're coming from distributors, you might kind of think that that's the philosophy and the way to go. And it's really not when it comes to brand direct. I think I'm just going to get the buy box algorithm explanation just like tattooed on my forehead or something, so I don't have to explain it to every brand owner. I feel like you have to explain it all the time because Amazon is its own like funnel, and a lot of times it's difficult to convey things to brand owners. I think you have to really relate things to them on a very simple level sometimes because it's not their business. Amazon is more so a headache, and to flip the script on that and take it from being a headache to something that can actually benefit their business goes, leaps and bounds with brand owners.
Yeah, I use the pie analogy a lot. It's like you have a
Yeah,
pie.
I started
It's a
doing that.
very, very simple, self-explanatory analogy. You have a pie, and the more sellers you have, it just slices the pie up into multiple pieces, right? But when you give the pie to one person, they can consume that whole pie. It's incentivizing us to actually grow the size of the pie, which is, grow their overall sales as opposed to just diluting that pie, which is what many Amazon sellers do, is just look to suck out sales, and just make a quick buck.
Yeah. I think we steal each other's sayings so much that I forget who stole it from who. And I did take the pie thing from you. I've started using that. So
Yeah.
it's a perfect way of explaining it and just something that makes sense um, to the common person who doesn't understand how Amazon works. We get so entrenched in that, as sellers. Like, yesterday I was dealing with something relating to like this granular listing variation issue right? Like, and all of that was to solve a problem for a brand, and the brand knows nothing and doesn't understand and doesn't care. And even if I told them, it probably wouldn't matter. All they care is that the thing gets fixed. And so, while we have to do all that stuff on the back end, unfortunately, just conveying them and talking to them, I have to check myself all the time to stop being so granular when I talk to the brand and talk to them like, they're basically, not to say be offensive, but talk to them like they're a child, essentially, to dumb things down respectfully, obviously, to get them to understand. And that's the most effective thing. Put things on a third grade reading level. That's what Hormozy says, and it's very true.
Yeah. You think about if, I'm like, there's many areas of, different avenues in business that are completely foreign to me and, and foreign to you. And it's like, I would want somebody to do the same for me. I would want, explain it
Mhm.
to me in layman's terms, don't overcomplicate it. And that's, you got to think about the same way, like with brands. It's like, we're so entrenched, like you said, in the day to day that sometimes, we might breeze over something or, it's like goes right over their head.
Yeah, and it's important for people in the community, obviously, to I think we're pretty decent at answering these granular questions because it's kind of how both you and I think. But when it comes to the brand, they don't really care. It's not that they're incapable of understanding. It's that a lot of Amazon is just about educating. And I say that all the time on the phone. I say, I'm just here to educate. I'm not here to sell you. I'm here to educate and then allow you to make the best decision for your brand. And that's a lot of what Amazon is.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Yeah.
guys have any questions as well, while we're kind of like rambling on here, feel free to drop them in, and we'll be happy to answer them. But we can always continue. These are such interesting discussions because it's like I feel like when we do this and when we talk about these things, it removes me from the business and it kind of lets me zoom out a little bit and think about it from the perspective of being the brand owner, or we get so entrenched in the day to day that it just kind of makes me zoom out a little bit. I don't know if it does the same thing for you.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's it's totally, you're in the day to day. You're in the grind, and it's like, just seeing things kind of on a holistic level, and just like, mentally recapping everything that you're doing. It's, yeah, no, I definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a the granularity of the business model versus the amount of simplicity that you need to like that's such a big thing that I feel like not a lot of people talk about is there's a very large knowledge gap between the brands that you speak to and then your knowledge of the platform ideally. I always say I could never do what the brands do. I have no idea how to run their business. And when you're reaching out to these companies and these brands, looking at it from the perspective of education and becoming, we talk about being a partner. What does a brand partner mean? It means helping them to understand. And that's a really big component of actually what's going to close accounts a lot of times. Because if they don't understand, how can they work with you?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, Question here. How many calls did you make before getting the first yes, and how did you motivate yourself when you refused before the first result?
I think getting a yes sometimes is fairly easy. I think that whether it's a profitable or a good account is another question. I think if you call enough suppliers, yeah, you're going to get a yes. And I mean, if you call 50 suppliers, I pretty much guarantee you there's going to be one yes in there. Would you say that's a fair number?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and just and you'll learn this as you move on in the business, is that, yeah, I don't want to hear yes a lot of times. It's almost like the better if you could hear like somewhere in the middle where they're like, we're not really doing that. We're not taking e-commerce. The tonality of that is much more attractive to me, because that tells me there's a barrier up, and there's going to be
Hmm.
way less competition. So as you get better
How do
at the
you
model, you
how
won't
do you
need
deal with, like, for you, we're dealing with rejection?
it's yeah, I mean, it's asking questions, and uncovering why they have these feelings, and positions about Amazon, and then strategically coming in with a solution that seemingly debunks all of those preconceived ideas that they have going into the call.
Yeah,
Because like
preconceived is that's the word for it for sure.
if I were to draw up a sequence of what it looks like, with a brand, is that the reality is 90% of brands are going to say no. Why? Because they don't want to work with Amazon sellers or e-commerce. Why? Because they've had bad experiences with Amazon sellers or e-commerce. What were those experiences, right? Uncovering
They're gonna
what
say
those,
why again.
uncovering what those experiences were, allows you to provide a solution, that works for them.
Yeah, and don't take it personally either. Rejection. What can you do? You know, that's the
Yeah.
thing. A lot of people, I think, have a fear of that. Um, I personally have never really has never really affected me too much when all the no's, just in anything, doesn't really bother me. Um, I don't know. I think it's just if you do, just don't take it personally. I think just moving on to the next one.
Yeah, definitely. That's it's the key, is just putting in those reps for sure. Um, Peppermint oil beard journey sounds like a cool brand. check that
Yeah.
out. Do you have a network group with other sellers or students? It's something we're working on. Uh, we were just working on getting that going today. So we're actively have all that in the works. But you're always welcome to shoot us a DM on Instagram, and we can have a further chat.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it's something that you're looking to work with us, send us a DM and we can talk. Um, but yeah, we have things that are coming down the pipe.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a lot of it's the same thing in every. I use that comparison a lot actually. It's like it's the same thing. It's just numbers. More girls you ask out, the more higher likeliness your chances are going to go up probably. It's a percentage. Same thing with wholesale. You know, um, John, do you guys feel intimidated sometimes calling these brands? For me, sometimes such a big brand doing such big revenue, why would they listen to a small seller like me? Good question.
It's a really good question. Um, it's have I, have we? I think I speak for both of us. Like we definitely have. Um, I think once not to say we've seen everything, but we've made enough calls and been in enough experiences at this point where I know that, the confidence and the conviction and the answer to everything. So there's not a lot for me personally that intimidates me, but I mean, then again, it depends. Like if I'm in a bad state of mind, if I didn't sleep a lot last night or my coffee wasn't strong enough, right? Like, and I'm off my game calling a brand, I might feel a little more intimidated. So, for the most part, no, but it happens. I don't know. How about you, Brad?
Yeah, same thing. If you're off your game for that day, obviously you have your calls where you're fumbling on your words. It always happens, no matter how many calls. It's just, everybody's got bad
Hmm.
days. Um, you know, I think that reframing the idea of yourself is where it should start. I wouldn't call yourself, why would they listen to a small seller like me? I would, they would listen to you because you know 90% more about Amazon than they do, right?
Yep.
And I'm telling that to John, right? Because John does know more than 90% of most brands about Amazon. So going
Hmm.
into it with that knowledge and that confidence, well, that knowledge is what's going to give you the confidence to then position yourself, right? If it's a big brand and they're completely optimized on Amazon and they have this robust A+ content and they have map pricing that never moves and they have one seller or two sellers that are just, and you can't add any value, well, that's going to be a lot more intimidating going into that call versus going into it with ammunition where you're looking at the listings and the listings are not good and they have competitors and knockoffs and they have all these different issues. So going into it with that ammunition is what's going to fuel your confidence to actually provide value and overcome the rejection. Because to this day, if we make a call to a brand and there's no value to provide, we're going to go into that call with the understanding that, all right, if we are faced with resistance and rejection, how much can we really provide to them?
Right. John, another thing too, I would say on that, and by the way, if it's any consolation, I had a call on Monday that I borderline almost hung up the phone because it was so bad where I was just like, I don't know what I was saying. And I think it was also because it was just a basic, customer service rep initial call.
Those are
And
always fun.
she was very, very awkward as well. So it just was a recipe for disaster. So if it makes you feel any better, we all have those calls, no matter how good you are at it. But one of the things that I do, I was going to give you a tip. So if I have a list of maybe high level calls or things that I have to do during the day, I will start and I will focus on smaller calls and I will focus on things that are not high pressure. Regardless, just like when you warm up in the gym, it's the same thing. That personally works for me. I find that once I get in the rhythm a little bit, I'm a lot more comfortable. regardless. So, if you are feeling intimidated or something, maybe try that. That might help.
Tim, good to have you in here as always. If you're driving, don't be texted and driving. But we're glad you're tuning in again. Um, yeah, and that's the thing, guys. We're going live every Wednesday, right? So 7 o'clock rolls around Wednesdays, which we've historically over the years called Wholesale Wednesday. That's because the inception of this concept came from my early days of working 15 hours on every Wednesday. I've since scaled it back to about 13 hours.
Yeah. You're
um,
really starting to take it easy, It's you
yeah,
got to you can't rest too much.
yeah, and we work with a number of different guys, helping start and scale Amazon Wholesale, walking you through the different things step by step. So again, shoot us a DM. Happy to have a further chat with you.
Yeah, we're going to give
As
you something that is tailored to you. That's so understanding more about where you're at in your journey is helpful. So yeah, shoot us a DM.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we're wrapping up here, if you guys have a last minute question or two, fire it in. But you know, tune in, guys. We love covering your questions and everything. We haven't done a sourcing in a little while. Maybe next week we'll jump on and do a little bit of sourcing in Smart Scout. In
Yeah.
our in
Yeah.
our
It's
past
just
episodes,
been
we've been doing a lot of
because, yeah, it's just for good reason, it's just, there's been, a lot, we've actually started sourcing and then we wind up getting so many questions that the sourcing doesn't really happen. So we've kind of tapered back, but yeah, we can definitely get back into it. And if you guys, do enjoy the content and the sourcing, and if you haven't watched the video, if you are tuning in late, or you didn't catch the beginning, we actually released a video on the YouTube channel today that is a 2-hour full course, start to finish. Takes you from a beginner all the way through exclusivity, and it is extremely valuable. And if you haven't watched it yet, I would definitely recommend checking it out. We put a lot of effort into it. Brad just linked it down below as well. A lot of effort went into that to make the best possible quality product for you guys. So we have that live on the channel, just posted this afternoon. So. And
Yeah.
if you do appreciate our content, and take value from it, sharing it with someone means the world to us to, help another entrepreneur or Amazon seller.
Yeah, absolutely. Tons of game in that course, guys. Free, 100% on YouTube, 2 hours. I'll tell you, people charge a lot of money for that kind of information. We wanted to provide you guys with as much value as possible. So, all that being said, thanks for tuning in and peace out. We'll see you next time.
See you next week.